Hello and welcome. Good evening, everyone, to our series of lectures about Israel. We called it a fresh perspective on Israel. And tonight is our fifth and last lecture. Tonight we will talk about Israel and the Middle East before and after the October 7th massacre. So tonight we'll have a very hard topic. It's the last of our 5 parts. And tonight we will talk about the 7th of October. We will talk about the massacre itself. We will talk about how Israel and the Middle East looked like before and after. And we will talk about the war. We will talk about how Israel's society is dealing with that. And we will learn a little bit about the tragedy that happened on October 7th. I hope to not overwhelm anyone. So what I don't want to do tonight is focus on the cruelty and the really, really hard pictures that no one can deal with. So I try to not describe too detailed what happened on October 7th. I don't want to traumatize anyone, but I think it's very important that we hear stories, that we know what happened. So I will give you some tools where you can go deeper yourself afterwards. I'll show you some websites. I'll give you information. But what is important for me is that you will get an understanding of what happened, that you can put things together and understand how this day had an impact on the entire Middle East. And I hope we will manage tonight without too many tears. My name is Talita Höll, and I'm very happy that you are joining us tonight here at Jesus House Church, Jesus Haus Gemeinde in Germany. I'm also very happy for everyone who's joining us online right now in this meeting. And I'm also very happy for everyone who will watch this video later afterwards on YouTube. Welcome. This is for you. I hope you will learn a lot. You will get a lot of information, and you will understand better what happened on October 7th and what impact this day has on the entire Middle East. So let's have a start, and I'd like to pray in the beginning. Dear God, we come before you tonight with open hearts. We want you to come into our hearts and encounter us. God, this is a tragedy, what happened on October 7th. And we ask you that you would heal our hearts and that you would help us deal with that you would help us to overcome depression and sadness. Would you forgive us every time that we judged Israel on what Israel is doing, because we don't understand the pain that Israel is going through. We ask you for your blessing for the entire nation of Israel. We ask you for your blessing for every Jew in the entire world, that you would protect them and let them feel your presence every day, and especially at night. And we thank you, God, that you will strengthen our hearts, that we would stand with Israel anytime, everywhere. In Jesus' name, amen. So tonight, our lecture will be a little different from the other lectures that we had the weeks before. Usually we would start with a song, and then I would give the lecture, and after 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, we would have time for questions. Tonight, it will be more interactive. That means we will listen to different songs, 3 songs altogether. We will, as I announced already, we will have a look on a few websites that show us more, that give us more information. So also for you, that you would have further information afterwards. So it will be more interactive, less of a monologue, less of a lecture, how it was the weeks before. But I hope that that will help us to deal with the tragedy of that day better. So we will give I will give you a few different perspectives and a few different ways of how to deal with that, because my goal is not only to share information, but I also want to help those who went through that to see that there is hope, and every one of us who has walked with the nation of Israel through that tragedy, that we all can see that Israel has hope and that there is hope for a future, and you're not alone. So one of the major feelings, I'd say, that people felt after October 7th was depression. Many people went through a very depressive time. Many people could not handle what they went through. They couldn't digest. They couldn't overcome. And it was like falling into a deep hole, and there's no exit, there's no way out. You would be stuck. It's like being in prison, it's like being in a tunnel, it's being caught, it's like being caught, and you don't see any way out of it. And depression is like falling without an end, and you don't know where to go. You don't know what to do, you have no strength, no joy, you don't see anything good in life. And many people went through a very depressive time after October 7th, especially those who have experienced any trauma on that day, especially family members, survivors, hostages who survived, everyone who was involved, the entire nation. And the first song that we will start with is a song that talks about depression, and it talks about how, if there is a way out of depression. And for everyone who doesn't know me that well, I've also been in Israel on October 7th, 2023, when the massacre happened. I studied there. I was there before a few months already. And then when that massacre happened, I was also there. And I stayed for an entire year. For the first year of the war, I stayed in Israel. And only then I went back to Germany, where I live. So I remember that feeling in the country. It was very sad, very quiet. It was actually, when you ask people how they felt, they couldn't really answer. I couldn't answer. Usually I'm someone who has a lot of words and talks all the time, but I would say en milim, which is Hebrew and means there's no words. You cannot describe. Like you can't say anything. It's too hard. You don't know where to start. You don't know what to say. So it was very quiet. And in general, you could feel the sadness. All the joy was gone. It was shocked, like everyone was in shock. It was a shocking experience, traumatic in any way, sad. It was beyond imagination. So many people went into depression. And yeah, many people also committed suicide. Especially those who survived, those who have survived, but their friends were murdered on that day. Young people, you might think that they should have hope for the days to come, but that was so horrible what they went through, and they couldn't understand why they survived while their friends had to die in front of their eyes. And this is something you cannot logically understand, and you cannot say this was right or wrong. Like you cannot understand, so you cannot judge. And I think we shouldn't judge anyone who went through that. So, but I want to let you feel a little bit of how many Israelis felt after October 7th. So they went through a time of depression. And the first song that we'll start with now is a song that was released in August 2023. So that was before October 7th. That was before the massacre. And it's a song that talks about depression. But it's a song that was originally not released together with the October 7th massacre. It was released beforehand, as I said. But later, people used it as a song to describe how they felt after October 7th. So this song that we will listen to now is called Latzet Medikaon, which is Hebrew, and it means to get out of depression. And it was written by Yagel Oshri. And the singer says about the song that he has written a pre-version of that song years ago, and years before he actually released the song. It was because a friend of him, a girl, was very depressed because her boyfriend has left her. And then Yagel tried to cheer her up a little bit and try to give her a reason to continue living and to say, like, look, there's a way out of depression. Good days will come. Don't be too worried. And then but he didn't release that song. Only later he worked on it again, and then he released a version on 15th of August 2023. Little did he know that 1.5 months later, this song would be high up in the charts in Israel, and everyone would know this song because it described so well what many Israelis felt that time. It was the depression of the feeling right after October 7th. It's as I said before, it's like falling into a hole and there's no end. You don't know where you are and if you can ever come out of that. So the song that I will show you is a song that was used in the beginning, or like Israelis felt with that song and they listened to that song in the beginning. But then later, when many soldiers had to fight and many reserve soldiers had to go to Gaza and fight there, and also to the north, and after their duty, they could come home after, let's say, 3 months, for example. And after a few months, for the first time, they could see their family again. And they filmed this, how they came back home. And for example, they surprised their kids at kindergarten or their wives at home. And then people filmed that and used the music of Yagel Oshri, of his song Latzet Medikaon, for the videos that they released on TikTok for the soldiers coming back home. So that's why the video that I'm going to show you now is not the original music video of the song, but it's a combination of many little pictures that show how the soldiers, especially soldiers, felt when they came back home. Because seeing what happened on October 7th was horrible enough, but then from that day on, you had to fight to protect your country and to prevent another October 7th for your country. That meant that many soldiers had to fight for a long time. The past 2.5 years now, they had to fight, and they had little time to process everything that they went through. And many soldiers have this depression in their hearts. So this will be a song about depression, but also about how to go out of depression. And it will be a song where we will see a lot of soldiers coming back home. And the very beginning, the first sentence of the song is something that Yagel Oshri only says, so it's not sung. It's a sentence that he just says in the beginning, but it's very fast, so I'll translate quickly. He says, "What is there a way to go out of depression? Is there any way to go out of depression?" That's his question, and then the song will start. So the song will be in Hebrew, but there will be English translation and transliteration. So let's listen to the song Latzet Medikaon from Yagel Oshri.
הדרך הכי טובה לצאת מדיכאון. המשפחה, החברים, אולי לצאת לבילויים, שיחות עמוקות, שיחות של הנפש בלילה, להתמודד עם שינויים, ההרגלים הישנים, הנשמה במלחמה עם הקרמה. עוד יבואו ימים טובים, אני מבטיח, עוד יבואו ימים טובים. גם בשעות החשוכות של הלילה תמיד יהיה כוכב קטן שיעיר לך את עצמך, את הדרך הביתה. תמיד זה הכי חשוך לפני הזריחה. מיליון רכבות דוהרות עד אוסטרליה, מחפש רחוק את מה שנמצא לך מתחת לאף. כל מכשול זה מדליה, קם ונופל אבל בדרך שלך. להתמודד עם הפחדים, לקפוץ למים עמוקים, לשחות עד הסוף, להגיע לחוף עד הלילה, להאזין גם לשירים, כי זמרים הם הרופאים הכי טובים שיש למדע להציע. עוד יבואו ימים טובים, אני מבטיח, עוד יבואו ימים טובים. גם בשעות החשוכות של הלילה תמיד יהיה כוכב קטן שיעיר לך את עצמך, את הדרך הביתה. תמיד זה הכי חשוך לפני הזריחה. מיליון רכבות דוהרות עד אוסטרליה, מחפש רחוק את מה שנמצא לך מתחת לאף. כל מכשול זה מדליה, קם ונופל אבל בדרך שלך. בדרך שלך, בדרך שלך. מיליון רכבות דוהרות עד אוסטרליה, מחפש רחוק את מה שנמצא לך מתחת לאף. כל מכשול זה מדליה, קם ונופל אבל בדרך שלך.
So as you could see, this song, לצאת מדיכאון, to escape depression, is a song that many Israelis could relate to, because it talked about their inner feelings about depression, but it also showed you a little bit of hope that there is a way out. And the question is not only is there a way out, but the question is, what is the best way out? There should be a way out. There must be a way out. And seeing so many young soldiers, you know, it's not those soldiers who had to fight in the army after finishing high school for 3 years. It's a lot of reserve soldiers. So they were on their reserve duties. That means they already have a family, they're married, they have kids. Some of them are have a lot of kids, like they're already a little older, and some are quite young, they have just started a family. So you see, they're just normal, ordinary people. They just want to live their life. They have their own jobs, their own families, and all of a sudden they go through that horror on 7th of October, and right after they have to go and fight in the war that they never wanted to. So what a joy. When they survive, they come back home and they see their family again. And you see, they're very, very nice people. They love their families. And so I wanted to start with that song because it was the first song that described the tragedy of October 7th. Or it was one of the first songs that was even released before October 7th, but it was a song that many Israelis could relate with after October 7th. Last week, when we had part 4 about the modern state of Israel, we listened to another song from Eyal Golan that was Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live, because that is a song that describes very well throughout history the only goal, if you could say, that Israel has. May Israel live and prosper. And this is a wish that I wish Israel too, and many of us do. We love Israel and we wish Israel to live. We want Israel to live. So this was another song that was released in October. That was right after the massacre. So it has many. It relates to the war, and many Israelis can relate with that song because it describes their general hope of survival and of prosperity, that they would live and show the enemy that the enemy can never defeat Israel because Israel is still alive and it will always be. So I promised you that I'll explain you a little bit about Israel and the Middle East, about what happened the years before, how this tragedy could happen, and what impact it has on the Middle East in general and on Israel. We will talk a little bit about that today. But before we talk about politics, about wars, and about all that, about that stuff, I want to take a few minutes and share a little bit about the feasts of Israel. Why? Because in our series of lectures, we have not come to the point where I could actually share about the culture in Israel. I try to a little bit. I try these through the songs. I try to show you different songs from different musicians, from different backgrounds. All of them are Jewish, but they come from different backgrounds, religious, not so religious, more secular, like this song. But there's always a strong connection to the land, to God. They come from different backgrounds, Ashkenazi, Mizrahi, Sephardic. We have not really talked about this. We haven't really talked about the backgrounds. Most of what I talked about was Ashkenazi Judaism, but there's also Sephardic Jews. So the Ashkenazi Jews are from Eastern Europe, and they were spread to America, Northern America, and Russia. And then you have the Sephardic Jews, and they come from Spain, Portugal, and then settle also on the northern coast of Africa. And then you have the Mizrahi Jews. They are more in the Middle East, like Iraq, for example. Iraqi Jews are Mizrahi Jews. Then you have Yemenite Jews, and so on. There's a lot. There's more groups, and I try to show you different songs to describe a little bit the variety and plurality of Israeli songs. So it's not, there's an Israeli culture, but it's mixed. There's many influences from many different other cultures. And wherever Jews were, they created their own culture, their own music style, and their own traditions. But what unifies them, what they all believe in, is the Bible. And most of their traditions are based on these biblical feasts. So the feasts of Israel, the Jewish feasts, are a very important part of Jewish life, and it's something that I want to talk about today because we see that nothing happens just like that. It's always connected to a broader story, and the enemy always tries to make these good feasts of Israel, where Israel is celebrating something, where God Himself told His people to celebrate. The enemy tries to use these feasts to always put a bittersweet touch into these feasts. So, for example, we talked about last week when Yom Kippur War happened in 1973. It was exactly on Yom Kippur, which is the highest day in the Israeli feast. So it's a fast day. It's the holiest day, you could say, of the year. Even secular, non-religious Jews would fast on that day, or at least not. There's no television on that day. People would not drive a car. Even those who are not religious would, out of respect and honor, they would not be in public, celebrating anything. It's a day of atonement. It's the day when God wants to be close to his people and take away the sins from the entire year. And back then, when the temple was still there, it was the day when the high priest could go into the Holy of Holies, only once a year, only on that day. So it's a very holy day. And exactly on that day, when everyone is fasting and focused on his relationship with God, that was the day when the enemies broke into Israel and started a war in 1973, the Yom Kippur War. That's why it's called like that, because it happened on that day. And also October 7th happened on a very happy, joyful day of Israelis, of the calendar, of the Jewish Hebrew calendar. It was Simchat Torah, which is the joy of the Torah. So I think that by now we have to learn more about the feasts in order to understand a little better the culture of Israel, and also to get a broader understanding of what is important in Jewish traditions, and to better understand why why the enemies always try to attack Israel on certain days that are important for Israel. So, and also, I want to give you something positive and good, something very Israeli, something very Jewish in the beginning here of our lecture, so that we would have an understanding of Hebrew, Jewish, Israeli culture. So the feasts of Israel are very typical, and let's have a look on the feasts of Israel and how they have an impact on Israel's society. So I brought you a picture of the Jewish feasts. It's a picture that is not of the best quality, I have to admit. And it's most of what it says is German, but as it's transliteration of Hebrew, it should work for English speakers as well. And I know the quality of the picture is not the best, but at least it's a picture with pictures on it. So I think this sticks better into our head, so that we can better understand what happened and we can better have a visual overview. So I will quickly talk about these Jewish feasts, very positive, very good thing that we will start with tonight. So the Jewish year starts with Rosh Hashanah, which is literally the head of the year, the beginning. The Bible says, God says to his people, on the first day of the 7th month of the year, you should celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, the head of the year. So basically, in the middle of the year, you celebrate New Year's Eve, which takes place usually in September, around September in our Gregorian calendar. So in September, Jews celebrate Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, the beginning of the year. And you would eat apples dipped in honey, because apples are the fruits of the season, and you dip them in honey and eat them because you wish each other Shana Tova Umetuka, which means a good and sweet year. That's because of the honey, or the other way around, because you want to have a sweet year. That's why you eat honey. And then you also eat pomegranate, because it's also of that season. And some people give them a meaning. They say, look, it has the seeds of the pomegranate are 365, like the days of the year. Other people say, no, it's over 600. It's relating to the commandments of the Bible. To me, it's not important whether it's this or that. It just shows that you can find a reason to eat certain things in everything, and it shows the prosperity and the good things, the overflow of a good year that is about to start. So that's Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, literally the head of the year. 10 days later, you'd celebrate Yom Kippur. That's in English, you would probably write Yom with a Y in the beginning, not a J. So it's not Yom, it's Yom. Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. This is the day when you would blow the shofar. The shofar is this horn that you can see from not a goat, it's another animal. I'm not good at animals. So whatever, it's a horn that you can blow. It's a shofar, and it's what you blow on Yom Kippur. that's the Day of Atonement. That's the day when the Yom Kippur War in 1973 happened. And there you can also see a Torah scroll. On every feast, you would read from the Torah. And in every feast, the Torah is important because you would read the passage in the Bible where it says that you should celebrate this feast, and then there's more information about it. And it's a Day of Atonement when the people of Israel would get rid of all their sins for the entire year, and they would stand in white clothes before God. And they would prepare for that day more than once. So the month before Rosh Hashanah, the last month of the last year, the month of Elul, is a month of preparation. So you would pray, a lot of prayers, slichot prayers, which means prayers of forgiveness before God. And then on Yom Kippur, you would dress white, you would fast 25 hours, and then you would celebrate because you would be with God for the next year and forever, one day. So that's Yom Kippur is strongly connected to Rosh Hashanah. And still in that in that season of celebrating, there's another feast that comes after. It's called Sukkot. Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles or the Feast of Booths, because you would live in these small booths or these huts, or like it's something that you would build that reminds you of how the people of Israel lived during the time when they wandered through the desert. And it's a very joyful feast. You would invite guests and foreigners. You would eat with them. You would eat always in that little shack that you built before, and you'd even sleep there. Some people do, not everyone, but yeah, it's very nice. It marks the change from summer into the fall winter season. There's not really a spring or fall in Israel. There is, but it's very short. So you basically have two different seasons. It's summer and winter. Summertime is hot and dry, and winter there's rain. It's not so hot. That's cool. So from Sukkot on until Pesach, which is Passover, you would pray for rain. So good weather means there's rain. And from Pesach to Sukkot on, there's not going to be any rain. So you'd pray for enough water in general on the surface of the earth after night, so that the plants would get enough water to grow. There's not much green in Israel during that time of the summer, but at least it's not completely dry. So Sukkot is a feast where you celebrate also with foreigners. You would invite them, and it's a very joyful day. It's for 7 days, so it's an entire week. And then on the 8th day, you would have Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is the joy of Torah. Torah is the commandments, the law that God has given his people. And it's also that part of the Tanakh, the Old Testament, that includes all the laws, which is the first 5 books of the Tanakh, of the Old Testament. This is called Torah. And these 5 books, Genesis until Deuteronomy, these 5 books are read in the service in the synagogue every Shabbat. So every Shabbat you would have the congregation come together, and during that time, throughout 1 year, you would read all these 5 books. So there's a continuous reading of them, and after 1 year you would finish. And on the day of Simchat Torah, that's the day when you read the last verses of Deuteronomy and immediately start with Genesis 1 verse 1 again. Why? Because it shows you that there's a continuation of reading and learning, because the Word of God is eternal and it will never end. And although you have finished, you're just at the beginning again. So this is Simchat Torah. People would dance around with the Torah. They would celebrate. They would have their kids on their shoulders. They would celebrate. They would dance all night. It's a beautiful feast. That was actually what happened on the night of October 6th. So the night before October 7th, that was Friday night in 2023. It was a Friday night, and I remember when we were in synagogue and we were dancing and celebrating the Torah. It was beautiful seeing all these people, all these fathers with their kids on their shoulders, dancing, celebrating. Everyone was happy. They were dancing around with the Torah scrolls. Really beautiful picture until late at night, and it was, you already had a whole week of Sukkot, of celebrating, of singing, dancing, being joyful, and then this is the very end. You celebrate one more day, and you're very happy, and you lay down in bed because it's very late and you're very tired, and the next day, the Shabbat, it does not always fall on Shabbat, but on that day it was a Shabbat as well. That would be Simchat Torah, the highest day, and you would continue your celebration. It would be the peak of it. And I remember that day, October 7th, at 6:29, the rockets came from Gaza, and this beautiful atmosphere was just destroyed. And there was people didn't understand what's going on, because in the middle of the most joyful day in the celebration of the people of Israel, all of a sudden a war started, and Israel was surprised because no one was prepared for that. But we will talk about that later. Just for you to know, that happened on Simchat Torah, the last day of Sukkot. And then there's another season. So that was the fall season of feasts. It was Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot together. And then in December, there's Hanukkah. We already talked about Hanukkah. It's the celebration of the Maccabees winning over the Greeks and winning back the temple. They rededicated the temple after the Greeks put their own gods there and made it really unholy, and they had to conquer it back and rededicate it to God. And that was a celebration of Hanukkah. That was also the miracle of the oil. So there was only oil for one more day for the menorah, which is the lampstand with the 7 arms in the temple. And the oil was only for one day. So it lasted only for one day because it was not enough, holy pure oil. And they needed 8 more days to produce new oil. But the miracle was that this oil lasted for 8 days. So that's the miracle that we would celebrate on Hanukkah. And that's why we have the Chanukiah, which is a lampstand of 9 arms, because it includes the 8 days of the miracle plus one more as the servant light that would give light to the other 8. So that's Hanukkah, and this is also when you would eat sufganiyot, which is very sweet pancake. You could call it pancake, whatever. Something very sweet because it reminds you want to eat sweet stuff because it reminds you, actually not sweet, but oily stuff because you fry it. So you want to eat oily stuff because it reminds you of the oil miracle in the temple. So that's Hanukkah. And then we would go further. There's not all the feasts here, by the way. Tu B'Shvat, for example, the New Year's, the day of the New Year for the trees is not here. Also not Purim, which is the celebration of the miracle from the story of Esther. It's also not included here. But it's like there's more feasts. But this is the most important, I'd say. Then we have Pesach. So Pesach usually happens in March, April. And Pesach is celebrated in the first month of the year, which is Nisan. And Pesach, in English you'd say Passover, is the celebration of the people of Israel coming out of Egypt, when God rescued them, delivered them from Egypt. This is when you would eat matzah, which is unleavened bread, and also the wine has a very important meaning on that feast. And this is also when, so for all the Christian listeners here, this is when Jesus' Last Supper. took place on Passover. That was when he gave a meaning to the bread and the wine from that Passover feast. And in general, this is also celebrated one entire week. It's actually the Passover and the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. It's for 1 week, and you would celebrate how God delivered his people from Egypt. And the Christians celebrate during that time how God delivered us from the prison or the slavery in that we were in with our sins, and that was the time when he died on the cross and resurrected afterwards. And then 50 days later, exactly 50 days later, he would celebrate Shavuot. Shavuot is the literal translation is weeks, because Shavua is the week, Shavuot is weeks, and it's another harvest feast, and it's the feast where you celebrate 50 days later how the people of Israel received the commandments from God on Mount Sinai through Moses. It's also during that time the story of Ruth took place. So throughout, like during that time of the year, not at the same time with Moses, that was years later, but it's during the same time of the year the story of Ruth took place, and it's also the time when in the New Testament, 50 days after Jesus' death and resurrection, the Holy Spirit would come. So it's exactly 50 days later, 7 weeks after. That's why it's called Shavuot, weeks. So there's, as you can see, there's a few feasts in spring, starting with Pesach until Shavuot. And then there's a second season from Rosh Hashanah to Sukkot in fall. So there's 2 different seasons. And every week, the Jews celebrate Shabbat, which is the 7th day of the week. God gave them as a day of rest, as a day to encounter God. As all these feasts aim towards spending time with God. It's God meeting his people. So all these feast times, in Hebrew you say Moed, is a time when God wants to be close to his people. So it's very special for the people of Israel because it's directly connected to God and his relationship towards his people. And it's very personal how people can connect with God during that time. And on Shabbat, this is why we have these pictures here. There's 2 different candles, Shamor Vezachol, which is the 2 candles that you would light on Shabbat that remind you of the commandments. The commandment that says that you should keep the Shabbat and remember Shabbat. So it's Shamor and Vezachol to keep Shabbat and to remember Shabbat. Because in the Bible, there's 2 versions of the 10 Commandments, and one says to keep Shabbat, and one says to remember Shabbat. So Shamor, keep, Zachol, remember. Shamor Vezachol. And Jews believe it was, God said it in one word. Shamor Vezachol bedibur echad, in one word. So both at the same time. However, so there's the Shabbat candles, then there's the Shabbat bread, the challah, which is a certain bread that is braided in a certain way. And then there's wine, because wine is always important. And the Christians would say, as Jesus said when he, on Passover, when he gave a certain meaning to the bread and the wine, and he said, this is my flesh and this is my blood, then every time you would do this, you should remember him, Jesus. So every Shabbat, when you would eat bread and wine, you should remember what Jesus has done. That's for the Messianic, the Jewish believers in Yeshua. Okay, so this is the feasts, the Jewish feasts, and they were given to the people of Israel already during the time of Moses, most of them. Of course, the Hanukkah was years later when the Greeks were there. So that was even after the Tanakh, the Old Testament, was written, but before the New Testament. So most of them at least the other 5 of those that I just mentioned, and Shabbat were given to the people of Israel already in the Bible. So since that, the Jewish people would celebrate this, and it's a very important part of their tradition. And how exactly you celebrate this, that was written about that later in the Mishnah, the Oral Torah, and then more discussions about that in the Gemara, for example, and in other books. We talked a little bit about that on part 2 of our series, of our lecture series about Israel. So part 2, if you're interested in that, how Judaism and Christianity were developed, you can listen to that, because I showed more there about how the Talmud was written and what it talked about. So it's very interesting. I just want to mention that the Jewish feasts were already given to the people of Israel in the Bible, and since thousands of years, Israel would celebrate these feasts. And as I mentioned before, the enemy tries to use the most beautiful days of the year, when Israel is having a very close relationship with God, coming closer to God, meeting God. This is the time when the enemies try to attack Israel. That happened many, many times throughout history, especially in the modern history of the state of Israel. And it also happened on the October 7th massacre. As I mentioned already, there was the Simchat Torah, the joy of the Torah at the end of Sukkot, when Hamas attacked. And now let's go a little bit to a pre-story of these events. Last week, we talked about the modern state of Israel and about how many countries, the surrounding countries of Israel, tried to attack Israel from the very first day, even before the state of Israel was born. Arab Muslims would continuously fight against Jewish people living in the land of Israel. And then when more Jews came from all over the world, the Arabs would also fight against them. And right after the state of Israel was born, on 14th of May 1948, in that night, the Arab Muslims would attack Israel, and it was not only those who lived within the borders of Israel, so who lived in that area, but other nations, like nations with an army, with a government. They attacked the newborn state of Israel. And but Israel won. It's incredible. Israel survived every war. Actually, you have to say Israel won every war. Why? Because the state of Israel still exists. Every war, every fight against Israel is a fight about the existence of Israel. So for Israel, every war is a war that they cannot lose. Because if they lose, they will not exist anymore. Because the enemies of Israel wish the death of Israel. So Israel has to fight for its own survival. This is why I say Israel has won every war. It's not completely true, because Israel also, first of all, lost many people. Second, lost territory. Israel also lost sometimes and lost much. But in the end, Israel still exists, so it shows us that Israel could go out of every war victorious, in victory, so victoriously. That means that every war is an existential war for Israel, and it's a miracle that Israel still exists. And we see that throughout history, there's a certain pattern. I tried to explain this last week. There's a pattern. Whether all the neighboring countries of Israel attacked Israel altogether on many different borders, so in the north and the south, in the east, all at the same time, Whether they did that as a strategy, like in Yom Kippur War in 1973, or it was that they were about to attack and they've prepared everything already. They put all their tanks and their soldiers already towards the border of Israel. They were about to attack. All their planes were already ready to fight, but they haven't attacked yet. They were just planning to attack, which means that Israel would be destroyed within a short time, because if they all attack at the same time, Israel cannot win. So Israel would do the first step and attack the other countries before they could attack Israel, like what happened in the Six-Day War in 1967. So we see two different patterns, whether all the nations, all the surrounding nations would attack Israel. Israel has to defend itself, or the other countries are about to attack and Israel attacks first and has, through that, wins a little more time and can and the attacks would be less powerful. So, for example, in 67, in the Six-Day War. So these two patterns happened throughout the last decades over and over again, whether this or that. And then there's a third strategy of the enemy. The enemy tries to attack Israel from within. So if you have an army fighting against civilians, the armies of Arab countries against the civilians of Israel, this is what we call war. Do we also call it war if you have terror attacks and bus bombings and so on? What happened, for example, in the Intifadas? That's also a war, but it was not as visible as a war because it was not the other nations fighting against Israel. It was within Israel. So but it has the same outcome. People die, civilians die, Israeli civilians die, and you have to stay alert, you have to fight. But against whom? How do you know who's going to be the next terrorist? Who will do the next terror attack? Who will have the next bomb in the next bus? Which bus? So you have to stay alert, you have to collect more intelligence, you have to fight against an invisible enemy that is among you, which is other Arab people who would whether have an Israeli passport or they live in the territories of Israel in the West Bank, so-called West Bank, Judea and Samaria, or they would sneak into the country. Whatever, it has the same outcome. It's also war. It costs many people's lives. And Israel has many different strategies, tried many different strategies to make peace, because Israel wants peace. Israel wanted peace from the very first moment. You remember last time I explained to you how when the British were there and they had their mandate over Israel, and Israel took everything that was given to them, even if it was the tiniest bit of land, a small land that you cannot even defeat, a land that is surrounded, not only surrounded, it's split into three different parts that are not really connected. Israel would take anything people would give them just to have a state. Israel agreed on every peace plan, every partition plan, everything that was given to them. Israel would always say yes, but it was the Arabs who always said no. And this is why the Arabs wouldn't have their own state. The so-called Palestinians nowadays, they don't have a state because they always said no to everything. They said no because that meant that they had to accept Israel as an existing state, and they didn't want this. So in the end, they have nothing, but they want everything. That's the problem. So I explained to you last week that Israel wanted to have peace, and they tried many different ways. So they tried to give back land that they have conquered. For example, in the Six-Day War, they conquered lots of lands For example, lots of territories. For example, the Sinai Peninsula, they conquered that, but they gave it back for free, kind of. They gave back many territories for free because they wanted to have peace, land for peace. They made a lot of peace agreements. They always said yes to whatever was offered to them, but they lost everything, but they never got peace. So the enemy would take everything, but never give peace to Israel. And one very good example for that is Gaza. So the Gaza Strip was a place where Israelis lived. There was a place where Jewish people had their villages, their houses, their families, they lived there. There was an area that Jews and Arabs lived together. Not really peaceful, but they lived together. And in 2005, Israel came up with that idea, or it was a longer process, I just make it short. Israel gave the Gaza Strip into the hands of the Arabs who lived there. So Israel made this area free of Jews. The Israelis made their own people to leave that area. So all the Jews were forced to leave Gaza. They were not allowed to live there anymore. They were pulled out of their homes, literally, because many of them didn't want to go. It was their home. They said, why do we have to leave our house? Why do we have to leave our home? Why do we have to give up our whole village, our whole city to people, to our enemy, actually, people who don't like us? But the idea behind that, under Ariel Sharon, the idea was, let's give the Palestinians, the Arabs, let's give them an area that is free of any Jews. They can do whatever they want with that piece of land. So they freed it from Jews, and they let them have democratic elections. And Gaza could, with all the money that they got from the UN and all the governance that they got from the UN, they could have built the most beautiful country out of that. But what happened? In the only elections that ever took place, the people of Gaza voted for Hamas, which is a terror organization. And this is what came out of that Gaza Strip. The society suffered under the rulership of Hamas because Hamas took all the money, not for maintenance or building streets, building hospitals, building schools, electricity, water systems. No, for nothing, but only weapons against Israel. Building tunnels, which is terroristic infrastructure against Israel. So the only goal of Hamas from the beginning on was to destroy Israel. That means that the people of Gaza who wanted to live without any Jews, they wanted to get rid of all the Jews. Okay, all the Jews left Gaza in 2005. And from that day on, there were no Jews living in Gaza anymore. And Gaza could have developed as a beautiful, beautiful country, but instead it turned into the worst terror place on earth, with a tunnel system that has more terror infrastructure, more tunnels, more underground infrastructure than the entire subway of London. So the London subway is quite big with lots of kilometers of tunnels. But in Gaza, you have even more tunnels than in the London subway. So Hamas put all the money into building that tunnel system, into buying weapons, rockets, whatever, and firing all these rockets against Israel. And we've had lots of rocket attacks from Gaza towards Israel throughout the past decades, over and over again. and no other country would accept this. But Israel was forced by the other countries like Germany, countries in the UN, that said, well, Israel cannot defend itself like all the other countries. Israel has to live with that because in the end, Israel was called the suppressor, as if Israel did anything. Israel was called you call them settlers, as if they go there and take away the land from people who have lived there before, which is not true. They made Israel look like the suppressor, as if Israel is the reason for Hamas to fight against Israel. So they made it look like as if it's Israel's own fault that all these rockets come towards Israel, which is not true. Hamas is a terror organization that has only one goal: to destroy Israel. So the school books in Gaza, financed by the UN and other very nice help organizations that finance the terror in Gaza. So these school books talk about Israel as the biggest enemy and how to destroy Israel. There was lots of hatred against Israel in these school books. So it doesn't surprise anyone to see that the next generation that was raised there since 2005 was a generation full of hatred against Israel. Kids, young people, especially young men, were trained in summer camps on how to use weapons and how to fire rockets against Israel. So it doesn't wonder that at one point Hamas would attack Israel, and Israel knew that this day would come. And Israel had collected a lot of intelligence because they want to find out when would that happen, how would that happen, what exactly would happen. But the entire world is interested in what happens in Gaza. So the entire world has their media, journalists living in Gaza directly in these buildings where Hamas is also living. Hamas has the entrance to their tunnels right under these buildings where the media, international media, reside in. So these buildings are the entrance to the Hamas tunnels. Also, schools, hospitals. Hamas knew exactly where to hide because Israel is a country that has a very high moral standard for their soldiers. So Israel would not just fire back if anyone shoots at them. They have to look who is there. If there's women, children, even if they see a terrorist but surrounded by women and children, they would not shoot. Although the terrorist shoots them, they would not. Because they don't want any civilians to die. But I wonder, are these really civilians if they willingly surround the terrorist as a protection shield, a human shield? The other way around, what kind of government is that? If the Hamas, a terror organization, forces its own people to be a human shield around them. So they only want more money from the entire world, especially from the UN, to finance, they say, hospitals, schools, and so on. But in the end, to finance their own weapons and terror infrastructure against Israel, while schools and hospitals had to run on additional money. So there was a lot of money that was brought into Gaza, but only a very small percentage was actually used for the society, the civilization, while the civilians, while Hamas took most of the money for weapons and terror infrastructure against Israel. So Israel had to fight against this enemy and had to prepare for an attack that would soon come. But Israel didn't know exactly when. So at this point, we could ask ourselves, why did Israel give up Gaza? Why did Israel leave Gaza? Why did all the Israelis, all the settlers, the Israeli settlers, why did they have to leave Gaza only to let this become a place full of terrorists against Israel? It was better when the Israelis still lived there, when you had some settlers living in Gaza. The same with Judea and Samaria nowadays, the so-called West Bank. Some people claim all the Israelis have to leave this area. Well, if Israel did, if Israel pulled out all the Jewish people from Judea and Samaria, which is the homeland of the people of Israel, but let's say Israel left this area, what would happen? What do you think? Another Gaza would come out of it. Whether it's Hamas or any other terror organization would control these people and make this a very dangerous place for Israel, within Israel, which is very dangerous for Israel. How can you defend a country that is not only surrounded by enemies, but also has its own enemies living right inside, amongst their own people? So what came out of Gaza, because Israeli settlers left Gaza, and what came out was a terror stronghold. So Israel knew one day Hamas would attack. Israel attacked all the time, but that was only rockets. Hundreds of rockets sometimes, but only rockets. And Israel was very creative and built the Iron Dome, which would so if a rocket was sent towards Israel, Israel would send another rocket. It's not a real rocket. It's something that meets the other rocket in the air and creates an explosion so that the rocket would not explode when it falls on Israeli ground, but it would already explode in the air, so that it would never reach Israeli soil. Only the fragments, the parts of it that would fall off. So Israel has really come up with very creative ideas to encounter that terrorism that they were confronted with, and it was only rocks that came all the time. From time to time, there was some people jumping over the fence. Israel built a fence, of course, for self-protection. From time to time, there were people jumping over the fence, and Israel could catch them. And then they built a wall, and people would still try to climb that wall and still go on the other side. By the way, during the entire time, Israel sent electricity and water and food and medication into Gaza the entire time. Why? Why would you feed your enemies? Why would you give them food and water and electricity and everything if their only goal is to attack you? Well, because Israel is a very friendly country, and Israel even serves its enemies, even loves its enemies. And now to all the Christians who are listening, we know that Jesus Christ said, you should love your enemies. Show me any Christian country that ever loved its enemies so much that it would give them food, medication, electricity, water, everything they needed. And what was the outcome? Only more and more rockets against them. There's no Christian country that ever did that. But Israel did that all the time, throughout the past decades, and even throughout this ongoing war. Even after October 7th, Israel helped the people of Gaza to survive. So no one can say that Israel committed genocide. No one can say Israel committed or tried to commit genocide in Gaza. Israel did not. Because if Israel wanted to let anyone die over there in Gaza, they could just stop sending food, medication, water, electricity. But if Israel stopped only for one day The entire world was against Israel, saying, how can you do this? But no one asked Hamas, which is the elected government in Gaza, to protect its own people. Hamas doesn't care about its own people. But Israel is made responsible not only for protecting its own people. Well, this is something we can discuss if Israel actually is allowed to protect its own people. But Israel has to protect the people of its enemies. Why? Double standard. You see, this is anti-Semitism. We ask of Israel to feed its own enemies while its own people have to die and are slaughtered by terrorists. This is not fair. This is really not fair. But this is a double standard. And then people claim Israel committed genocide, which is, I think, the wrongest word you could ever use in that context, because what Hamas is doing, this is genocide. On October 7th, Hamas came with only one goal: to kill as many Jews as possible. And in general, to kill as many people as possible, because they didn't even care if there were any Thai people, people with foreign passports. They didn't care. They would kill them all. But especially Jews, they were very happy and held them as a trophy whenever they could kill a Jew or harm any Jew. So this is genocide. But Israel would not shoot if it sees women or children around a terrorist. That's why the terrorists take people as human shields, because they know that Israel has a very high moral standard. And now the West comes, who has no idea what's going on over there, and says, this is genocide what Israel is doing. You see, people who have no idea of what's going on say really stupid things, and Israel is put into trouble through that. Because who are we that we think we could say to Israel what to do? Israel is really trying to survive and trying to protect its own people, and we make it very hard for Israel. We would not accept this if anything of October 7th happened on our own soil. We would not accept any country to do that. But if it happens against Israel, then it's like, maybe it's Israel's own fault. What? We see how many double standards we're applying over Israel. That's not fair. And Israel is, by the way, Israel treated sick kids from Gaza throughout many, many years. They would let the sick kids, together with their women, with their mothers, come over the border into Israel. They would treat them in Israeli hospitals, and then they would let them go back to Gaza, because obviously the people in Gaza did not have enough medical care, and Israel took care of that. Again, Israel loves its enemies. Israel also did that with people from Syria, sick kids from Syria. And no one mentions that in any newspapers, in any media, the big media. They never mention this. They only mention Israel did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong, as if Israel did only things wrong. But if you have a closer look, you can see that Israel did nothing of that, the wrong thing. Israel only helped its enemies. What Israel didn't do is what they showed in the media. For example, they claimed Israel sent rockets and fired rockets into Gaza on hospitals and schools. That sounds as if Israel would kill sick people and children. This is not true. First of all, Israel does not send these rockets over there. Many, if a hospital or a school was struck, was usually because the rocket from Hamas fell on their own soil and hit the school or the hospital. If it was a rocket from Israel, then Israel would warn its enemies beforehand. They would send leaflets and they would call people there. They would tell them tomorrow or in 2 hours or then and then we will attack this area, this building. Please leave. So Israel would tell all the civilians to leave the area before they would send a rocket. And why would they send a rocket? They would only destroy that building if they know that it's a terror cell. It's a place where terrorists hold their meetings, or if it's the entrance to a tunnel, so terror infrastructure, or if it's a place where where Hamas stores their rockets. So if Hamas stores their rockets under school buildings and hospitals, then who's doing wrong? Is it Israel who is then attacking the weapons that are formed against Israel? Or is it not Hamas who is putting its own children into danger? And again, Israel does not attack while the school is full of people or the hospital is full of people. Israel would tell them beforehand to leave so that this building would be empty. And only then Israel attacks, and only because they told them beforehand, because there is a terror infrastructure or the entrance to a tunnel or weapons or rockets, a storage of rockets underneath. And same with journalists when they say, "Oh, Israel attacks the media." It's not that Israel randomly shoots at buildings with a journalist inside. Israel would warn them beforehand. But what kind of journalism is that? That the journalists would sit in the same building with Hamas. So again, you see, Israel is doing right and is having very high standards, and even taking away its own chances to win because it warns its enemies beforehand. But in the end, everyone says it's Israel's fault, Israel is guilty, Israel is committing war crimes, whatever people claim. It's not true. Israel is doing very right here and has a very high moral standard. And if still civilians die, then it's the fault of Hamas, the fault of a terror organization that doesn't care, that kills and shoots their own people if they try to escape, if they say anything against Hamas. So please, 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 let us be more careful with what we say against Israel. Let us check beforehand and see, maybe Israel is right. Maybe it's the fault of Hamas. Okay, so Israel is having a very high moral standard, and Israel is trying to seek peace with its enemies, but it never happened. Whatever Israel tried, whatever commitment they did, even if they gave land and they thought, okay, we will give you whatever you want, we will give you all the land, just leave us, let us live. The enemies would not do this. They would take the land and then want more. So there's no end. There's no end to it. So we see the best example is Gaza, and this is what we're talking about. So what happened before October 7th was Israel was reaching out its hand over and over again, trying to seek peace with its neighboring countries, especially with the so-called Palestinians, the Arab people living amongst them. They wanted to seek peace with them. But what was the outcome? Everything Israel gave them, they turned it into worse against Israel. So Gaza is the best example, as Israel had to pull out all the Jews from this area, Jewish people who lived there since decades already. They had to move them out because the Palestinians, the Arabs there, wanted to live on their own. What came out was they voted for a terrorist organization, and the peak of it is what happened on October 7th. And now let's look a little bit deeper into what happened on October 7th. I told you I will not show you really horrible pictures because we want to honor people who suffered and died on that day. Those who were murdered already went through a lot of suffering, and we don't want to show pictures of them. But I want you to have an understanding of what happened so that you can see the cruelty and the horrible things that happened on that massacre day. So what I brought for you is a website with with a map. It's called Mapping the Massacre. This is the website. You can copy that website. I'll show you in a second how it looks like. You will also find it in the description below the video. It's a map basically of Israel with all the places where the massacre took place on October 7th, and it's mapped out on that map, and we will have a look at this now. So when you open that website, this is how it looks like. And you'll see this is Gaza. It has just zoomed in. So this is the map of Gaza. You can see Gaza City, and in the south, Khan Yunis. And then on the other side, in the east, you see Israel's places. And all these dots stand for a massacre that took place. So all the red dots are Israelis that were murdered. All the blue dots are kidnapped survivors. So we know that on the morning of October 7th in 2023, Hamas led a simultaneous wave of assaults on Israeli civilian communities and military posts. And that was like over 5,000 rockets from Gaza were launched into Israel. And thousands of Israelis were murdered. It was 1,225 only on that day. And more than 250 Israelis were taken hostage. And as you can see, many of the hostages were killed, whether killed already in Israel and then taken to Gaza or killed in Gaza. Only 168 survived. And many, many thousands, more than 4,800 were injured on that day. And on that website, you can see on the left side some more information. Then on the map, you can zoom in and you can click on every single dot and see more information. I'll quickly show you, I will explain you a little more about that website. So first of all, we will first do the little dots and then I will explain you more. So we will go to, we'll zoom in a little bit. There's Nir Oz, which is a city or a village, a kibbutz in the south of Israel. And we will go a little closer. We will zoom in into Nir Oz, which is more in the south. And there in Nir Oz, the more you zoom in, the more dots show up because it's more and more people. And every single dot has a name because it's a person that was murdered or kidnapped. And this is the only place in Nir Oz where you will also see orange dots. And this is where we'll go to now. So as an example, you can click on every dot and see the name and read a little bit about the story. They can see the houses, the streets, and the orange dots, as you can see, belong to the Bibas family. Many of you may know the Bibas family. So for example, we can click on Ariel Bibas, and we will learn more about the story of the Bibas family. So whenever you click on a dot, you will find more information about this person on the left side. And the Bibas family was a family that became famous, if you can say this, because the entire family got kidnapped. It was the parents and their two little babies, their two toddlers. They were all taken hostage. So here we have Kfir Bibas. Kfir was only 9 months old when he was taken hostage, and he's saying he was 6 months old when he was taken hostage, and then he was 9 months old when he was killed, was murdered. So the entire family, Yarden and Shiri, which were the parents, and Kfir and Ariel, the two babies, were taken hostage on October 7th. And so all of them were kidnapped by Hamas. And after 502 days, Ariel, who was 4 years old, and Kfir, who was 9 months old, were returned home as bodies because, Hamas killed them. They tortured them and killed them in a very cruel way. And their mother, Shiri, her body was also returned later. Very cruel because they first gave back another body that was not hers, but claimed that it was her body, just to make the entire nation more to let them have more fear and more tragedy over that family. While Yarden was later released alive. So when he came back after he went through the hell of Hamas in Gaza, he came back and found out that his wife and his 2 little sons were murdered by Hamas. So if you want to read more about these people, just click on their name and then you can scroll on the left side and you will read more information. You can even watch videos depending on each person. There's pictures, there's videos, there's a story. Okay, and let's zoom out a little bit. So this is, for example, in the village of Nir Oz, the kibbutz of Nir Oz. Let's go more north, because we will see that also on the street we find many dots because people try to flee. There was a Nova festival where many people were, and then they tried to escape. And on the street, there's next to Mifazim, we find a street, and many people died there. And we can click on a name here, Shani Luke, for example. Shani was, she also had German citizenship, and her case was also in the media, quite big, because Shani was only 23 when she was at Nova Festival, and she got also kidnapped. And she was at the Nova Festival with her boyfriend, and Shani talked on the phone with her mother, and said that they tried to find a place to hide, and then the connection broke, and she never talked with her mother again because she was Hamas found them. Hamas found her and abducted her to Gaza, and she was murdered and brutally murdered. And the family only learned about her murder when they saw a video of Shani on a pickup truck, on the back of a pickup truck, driving through Gaza, when the entire crowd cheered over the body of Shani in the middle, and it was Shani had not, like, she was almost naked on that pickup and surrounded by many men who held her as a trophy, brought her as a trophy to Gaza. And the family only found out that it's Shani when they recognized her body with her tattoos, because she had a few tattoos and the family could see this is Shani's tattoos. So the Hamas murdered many people, and also did a lot of violence against women and abducted them. And if you want to hear more about the story, you can read it on the left side. You can scroll down, you can find more information, see pictures, videos, depending on the person. So that was just as an example. So Shani was, in the beginning, she was probably, well, she was actually, people thought that she was dead when she was on the pickup truck, but then people later thought that she was still alive. And then when they found a bone in Israel on that place, this is why her name is located on the map here, it's where they found a bone of her head, of her skull, and they knew that she was already killed in Israel and taken hostage to, her body was taken hostage to Gaza. So you see the cruelty of Hamas. I want to show you more on the map, so you can click on every single name, learn more about the story of this person. Now let's go back to the very beginning of that map, where we started, and there at the map, so there's all these dots. When you zoom in, you find more, and then there's also on this map, there's the women's story. So if you go to the very left bottom of the page, you will find the button Women's Stories, because this website focuses also especially on the widespread sexual violence against women. And if you click on Women's Stories, the website opens again with a map where especially the women victim stories are listed, and stories about them. So on the left side, again, you can read more information, and then you can also find pictures. Some of these pictures, you can click through the pictures. Some of these pictures have very cruel like here, for example, there's a warning that there's graphic content, and only if you want to see it, then you can click on see anyway, and then you can see it. But if not, then you just continue, and you'll find more evidence, more pictures. Because you remember 2 weeks ago we talked about the Holocaust, the Shoah, and how the Nazis tried to hide what they did. But other than in the Holocaust, here the Hamas terrorists did not try to hide anything. In the opposite, they filmed it. They live broadcasted it through social media, the Facebook pages, Telegram, whatever people had. So they went into Israeli homes. They murdered Israelis. They tortured them. They did a lot of sexual violence against women, and they filmed it and they live broadcasted that in the internet because they wanted everyone to see it. So we have a lot of evidence that these things happened, especially the way how they happened. But even knowing the fact, despite the fact that Hamas has provided us with all these evidence, people now even claim that it all didn't happen on October 7th, or that it was not as bad as people claim. I don't understand, because we have proof, we have evidence of what happened. We have the names, we have the pictures, we have videos, we have everything that proves that it happened, but still people say it never happened, or it wasn't that bad. And this shows again, this is anti-Semitism. If you don't want to accept what happened against Israelis, if you wipe the cruelties away as if it was nothing. And again, this is another crime against Israelis. If after everything that they went through, they have to hear again, oh, that wasn't that bad. Get over it. Wow, that's really hard. Okay, let's go back on this page. If you scroll up again on the left side, there you can find more information about it. So I'll read a little bit through it. On October 7th, a coordinated wave of assault by the Hamas terror organization resulted in the deaths of over 320 women. Additionally, about 100 women and girls were kidnapped. Women and girls caught in the rampage were sexually brutalized, physically tortured, and killed. Survivors witnessed it, and surveillance footage caught it. 100 days after October 7th, 17 Israeli women are still held hostage. So it goes a little bit through the time schedule kind of what happened, and 30 women aged 12 to 48 who have been released from captivity endured sexual abuse during their time in captivity. So there's really horrible stories also. It goes on. In one instance captured on video, a woman was seen with her dress torn, her body gruesomely mutilated and burned, a stark representation of the violence inflicted upon the victims. Photographs viewed by the Times showed a woman's corpse found in the rubble of a besieged kibbutz, with her thighs penetrated by dozens of nails, further illustrating the severity of the assaults. Another video provided by the Israeli military showed 2 dead soldiers shot directly in their vaginas, emphasizing the targeted nature of these heinous acts. Survivors, women who endured the horrors of the attacks, were not only confronted with the profound loss of their loved ones, but also subjected to sexual assault. The Hamas perpetrators, primarily men, went beyond acts of violence. They deliberately targeted women, treating them as property or vessels to inflict harm on the state of Israel. And so on and so on. So you see, what Hamas was trying to do was not only killing people, murdering people, torturing people. Everything they did as an act against the state of Israel. So they knew if they killed an Israeli woman, they did it against the whole people of Israel. If they killed a Jewish girl, if they raped a Jewish girl, they did it against the nation of Israel, against the Jewish people. So this website is dedicated to all the victims of this massacre, to all the hostages, and especially this, what I showed you, this page that describes the women's stories. It gives us more information about the women. And on that website, you have the opportunity to click on next, and then you'll find more and more stories, and it kind of leads you throughout this website. So if you click on next, you'll find it goes basically from one kibbutz to the next. It starts with Nir Oz, then it goes on, and it shows exactly what happened to these women in these places. It goes to Nova Festival. You see there's many, many dots that only come up later. So this is the women's page, and again, if you go back to the very beginning, then you start with you see everything, the entire assaults, everything against so with men and women together. So as you can see, you can also click here on next, and then you will be led through all the different places, all the kibbutzim, the Nova Festival side, and the things that happen on the streets. So you can see and get more information on this website. Okay, you can check this out later when you're on your own. In my presentation, I gave you the link, and on the next page of the presentation, I have prepared another link. It's called the Digital Memorial Project, and this link is basically 710, October 7th, and then 360, which is 360 degrees, because you can basically see it from all the different perspectives. .kan.org. Kan is an Israeli TV channel that created that website. So this Digital Memorial Project shows you, again, a map and many stories, but from another perspective. It's more of a memorial, and we will click on that now. So if you click on that website, then you will see this page, and there you have, again, a map, and you have all these places. So there's Gaza. This is where you don't see any dots, because it all happened on the Israeli side. When we can make the map big for everyone to see, and then you see that on the left side there is a plus where you can click on, and it describes a little bit minute by minute. You can see here what happened in these different places. There's also a legend that explains where are places, roadsides, military posts, where things happen. So I'll quickly explain you how this works. So we will click on Nova, which is the Nova Festival site. So here you have one dot for every location, for every village or site. So you click on it, and then the place opens, and you can click on different stories and see different stories. But here at Nova, it's special. So you can click on Fallen Names, and you will find the names and pictures of all those people who were murdered at the Nova Festival site on that day. It's many, many young people who were killed that day on that site. All of them were, they visited that festival, or they were medical staff, police, security, many people. It's lots of people. We cannot go through everyone. And then we can click on hostages list, and we will see a list of all those from the Nova Festival that were taken hostage. And again, it's many, many people. So it's not worth, like, for us now, as we don't have the time, we can't show you everyone, but you can see there's many people, and you can click on them and get more information. Especially here, you have the names and a few information about them. So it's many. This is only Nova Festival site, only Nova. Now let's go back on this map, and we have here on the right side the regional story. There you can read especially about the Nova Festival, and it gives you more information. So if you click on that, you find a few information about what happened. You can find a video that people took before Hamas came. And if you go down, then you can find something like a clock that shows you what happened in which minute. So at 6:29, that was the time when the first rockets came, when it all started. So you can click on it, for example, at 6:29, and there you see this minute by minute what happened. Then you can click on the symbols. The 3 dots is a text. The picture is a picture that was taken originally there. And the video is like this little thing, and there you can. There's the DJ. He's still celebrating. All of a sudden, he finds out that there's a rockets coming, and he stops the entire party. Okay, you can do that on your own. We will go back because we will leave the Nova Festival side now. We will go to Be'eri, which is a kibbutz north of the Nova Festival site. In Be'eri, which is a kibbutz, there you see in every kibbutz on this map, the moment you click on it, you see the entire kibbutz, and every place has where something happened of a family, because it was family houses, and usually the entire family was killed on that day. You can click on that. For example, the Sharabi family. Sharabi was the father of the Sharabi family was taken hostage, and he was actually the only one who survived. His wife and his children, his girls, were killed, and he was held in Gaza, and he also wrote a book, and he says that when he was in Gaza, he tried to find something positive every day. So every day he wanted to find something that he can thank God for. I think this is amazing what this man did, and he lost his entire family, as many did. Usually the entire family was killed and was sexually abused and tortured and then killed, and only few of them survived. So let's go back to the Kibbutz Be'eri, and we will look at the Rotem Shoshani and Han families, because I want to show you some more options that you have. If you go down and you click on that clock, there you find the different events minute by minute. And if you click at 12:04, I think it was 12 o'clock, you can see at the 3 dots, you can see the story. Then there's a symbol like this with a phone. It's a WhatsApp conversation. You can click on that. On the right side, there's a WhatsApp correspondence opening. So they're basically texting each other, they're terrorists coming, they're kidnapping us, and so that the family got to know. And then on the picture symbol, again, you can see a picture, and this picture shows us how this house of this family looks like now. So it was all burned. So the terrorists came in, they killed people, they abducted people, they set the house on fire, and well, this is the ruin of the house. And then later people put up pictures of those people who were still at this time they were still held hostage in Gaza. Here it was since 50 days. Later it was even more. So people were, as we know, until January this year, that was when the last hostage was given back to Israel. So it was more than 2 years, 2.5 years that people were that the bodies of Israelis were held hostage in Gaza. Sometimes there was different waves of when people got released. Okay, so we see there's a lot of information, a lot of pictures, materials, and you can click on the clock and see what happened minute by minute. Let's go back and let's have one last story that we will look into Let's go more to the north to Sderot. Sderot is a city. It's not a kibbutz, it's a city, quite big as you can see. Now you can click on Sderot and then you see different places and what happened at these places. So the police station in Sderot was the place that was the target of the Hamas. We will look at the Suissa family because we will now quickly learn about the story of the Suissa family, what happened on that day. So it was Odaya and Dolev. They were married. Odaya and Dolev had two small daughters, Romi and Leah. And usually, when a rocket attack happens in Sderot, where they live, they would go into the car and they would move to their relatives in another city, because you might think, wait, if there's a rocket attack, then you have to go in the shelter. But usually, if you have rocket attacks in Sderot, which happens quite often, then you would have it not only once, but you would have many rockets coming in many waves, and it usually takes more than a day, maybe a few days of waves of attacks, and they don't want their kids to be traumatized by that, to get traumatized. So they would put them in a car. They have everything packed already, and they would move to relatives north in Ashkelon, Ashdod. So the same happened on that day. They wanted to get ready and leave, and then a tragedy happened because they ran right into the arms of Hamas terrorists, and then they wanted to go to the police station, and but little did they know that the police station was exactly the place where the Hamas terrorists were fighting. So this is how the story looks like. In the end, the parents would not survive. So let's go down and see the clock. So the whole story starts at 6:29 when the first rockets come. We will quickly read what happened. So the rockets are coming over the entire Gaza envelope. So it's the entire area around Gaza. Around 6:40, the family of the Suissa family tries to leave. So they prepare to leave, and here we can watch a little video that was recorded already before through a documentation. So they show how they have everything always prepared.
הם פשוט יצאו כדי לברוח משדרות ברגע ש...
זה פקל מוכן. פקל מוכן.
So they show us in this documentation, it is a video that was not on October 7th, but it was recorded beforehand for documentation about how they prepare for the rockets. So they would always have a suitcase that is prepared, ready for them to go with enough clothes for a few days so that they can live somewhere else. So the only thing they do is take the suitcase, take their kids, and go in the car. So what happens at 6:53 is that they would run into the terrorists. So they are in the car, and the terrorists shoot Dolev, which is the father. So they, at a square, they run into the terrorists, and the parents both try to run outside and try to flee with their kids. So the mother takes one, the father takes the other child, and they run into two different directions. And Dolev, the father, is hit. The terrorist shoots him at close range, and he falls. And his daughter Romi, that he took with him, ran to the mother, and there's also a little video sequence. You can watch this later. And then later we learn that the mother, I will make this a little shorter, I think. The mother will run with the two daughters back into the car, and they try to escape, and someone else, a Bedouin guy who they didn't know, he jumped into the car and took the driver's seat, and he tried to help the family, and he drove with the mother and the two kids to the police station, because there he thought they would get help because they thought, what's going on? There's terrorists here. Let's go to the police station. This is the only place where people can help us. And later, the terrorists come and they also shoot this man and the mother of the two kids in front of their eyes. So the kids see it all. They see first their father and then their mother and this other man being shot right in front of them. And only the babies survive, the two girls. And then what happened later, they wait in the car, they sit there, the parents are shot, and they're still in the back seats of the car. And then around 7:10 a.m., a soldier tries to evacuate them, and so yeah, also Dolev was brought to a hospital in Ashkelon, but later he died in the hospital in Ashkelon. Let's go to 7:33. There, the girls cry for help from inside the vehicle, and a sergeant hears them, and then we will watch now the heartbreaking video of these two little girls sitting in the car, and they talk to the sergeant, and the sergeant asks them, wants to rescue them, and the girl, Romy, has only one question. She says, "Are you of Israel?" She says, "Are you from Israel? Are you Israeli? Are you here to save us?" Because she has seen so many terrorists on that day that she doesn't know if he's really from Israel. Because we see that also on October 7th, some of the terrorists took uniforms from Israeli soldiers, and some of them even spoke Hebrew because they learned that beforehand. So they dressed up like Israeli so that people got really confused who's who. And this little girl tries to get saved and also wants her sister to get saved. And we'll watch the video now. It's in Hebrew. That's why I explained quickly what they said. It's in the middle of the shooting. So the sergeant tries to free them, and the girls talk, or the older girl talks with him and has only the question, okay, are you from Israel? That's her question. And then second, she says, there's a toddler here. This little baby needs to be saved. So she's really acting like a mother because she saw both of her parents being shot in front of her eyes, and there's no one else who can take care of her sister. So she acts like a mother now and says, you have to save my sister. So let's watch the video.
לא יורים, לא יורים. משטרה. לנו הרוגה פה. כן, חמודה, כן. אנחנו ניקח אתכם. בואי. אז בסדר, אני איתך. שוטר פצוע, בוא תבוא לפה. תהיה עם הילדות, אני אהיה פה. לך עם הילדות.
Okay, I think we can stop here. So the video shows us how the sergeant goes to the car, and there's two shot people in front of the car, like in the front of the car, and then there's the two girls in the back of the car, and he talks with a girl and asks, and she asks, "Are you from Israel?" And he says, "Yes." And then she says, "Then come and rescue us." And she says, "There's a little toddler here, my sister. You need to save her." And he says, "Okay, I'll do that, sweetheart." And he opens the door and he tries to take them out, but then there's more shooting, and so he has to run away. And you see blood on the floor, on the street. You see another dead body. It's in the middle of this massacre, so he runs away and protects his fellow soldiers or policemen fighting against these terrorists. And you see, within few seconds, people die. So he really has to decide what to do, whether to take out the two girls or run to his friends to help them, and he actually calls another man and says, "Go and rescue the two children from the car," because he has a gun, so or a weapon or whatever, a pistol, something to fight. So he has to run back to the scene and let someone else rescue the two girls. So in the end, both of the two girls survive while their parents are shot. And there's more stories like this. In this video or on this website, you can basically see everything that we know about every single case. You can click on the location, you can zoom in, you can choose the family, the spot, people where things happen, and you can see minute by minute what happened with all the information that are cleared for public. So you can see the text that explains what happens. You can see pictures, videos, audios. You can listen to audios. You can watch videos, WhatsApp conversations, all the information we have that are cleared for publication. As you can see in most videos, the pictures that show dead bodies or the shooting itself when a person dies is usually not clear, so you cannot see the entire scene, but you can see what happened, or like you can assume what happened. Again, many things that happened on that day, many proof that we have is so horrible that it's not cleared for publication, because people got traumatized only by watching videos. And Israel did not have the strength to help those who survived the massacre, plus those who have a trauma through watching the videos, plus those who had to fight, plus those who had to help. So there were like the entire country actually went through a trauma. We can close the website now. And the entire nation went through a trauma, and it was horrible what they all experienced and what they went through. And also first responders who went to the scene and tried to help, and what they had to see was horrible, seeing so many tortured people, so much violence. That was really hard for them, and also they got traumatized by what they saw. And then even later, when the scene was cleared from living victims, there's another organization called Zaka, an Israeli organization that tries to that helps, how do I say this, an organization that wants to honor everyone. So if you're alive, they go and try to rescue. If there's an earthquake, for example, or any catastrophe, a fire, whatever, they go there and do their first responders. They try to rescue people from the scene. And if people have passed away already, then they go there and they want to honor them and give them a burial that honors the life that was sacrificed here. So what they do is they not only take the body, the corpse, but they go and take every single blood or hair, whatever they find, every single part of the body, they would take it and put it together with the body and bury it all together, because they believe, in Judaism, you believe that in the blood there is the life of a person. So you would collect every single drop of blood, every single nail, fingernail, or hair that you find, every tooth, everything. It's not only taking all the arms and legs and body pieces together, the big ones. I'm really talking like this because that's what happened on October 7th, that people would be cut into pieces and their body pieces were all over. But they would not only take the big body pieces, but even search for the smallest drop of blood and collect it and put it all together to honor the body, to honor the life of this person and to put it all together for burial. And they did that even also to the terrorist bodies, because they believe every human being deserves some kind of honor. So what they would do is they would put the Israeli victims in a white plastic bag and the terrorists in a black plastic bag, because from the outside you usually cannot tell who's inside, especially with the victims, the Israeli victims. Many of them were burned. Many of them were burned together with their cars. So they had to be buried together with the car because everything was all together. You cannot separate anymore. And some people were buried together because you cannot take any, you can't split them. From some people, they only found one tooth, one hair, the only thing that the family could bury after that tragedy on that day. Especially what happened on October 7th massacre, at the Nova Festival site, when many people went together in one car and they tried to flee, and the Hamas shot the driver and put the car on fire. People were burned alive together with the car, 5 or 6 people or 7 or 10, depending on how many people were in the car, and they were all burned together. So in the end, you only have a bit of ashes, and you don't even know how many people that was. So how do you know who's missing, who's dead, who's maybe abducted in Gaza, to Gaza? It was a lot of work and very traumatizing also for the survivors and for the family members who wanted to bury their loved ones and they didn't have anything, or they had a piece of car, and then people said, well, in that car your son, your daughter was together with 4 other people, so we're gonna have to bury them all together. So you see how complicated that was and how traumatized everyone was after that. And these Zaka members, so the members of this organization, it's a religious organization, Jewish organization, they want to honor life. They were founded years ago. They serve in all countries in the world. So whenever there was an earthquake anywhere, in Nepal, in Chile, wherever, they would travel there. They were usually the first ones at the scene, helping, whether it was an earthquake, a fire that broke out, whatever, they help. So they do not only help Jewish people, they help everyone. And on that day, their work went on another level. So basically all of them who worked there at this organization got traumatized by what they saw. It was really horrible. And I was there and I spoke with this organization, with people who work there, and one guy explained us how they do it, and he showed me the plastic bag, white one for the Israelis and the black one for the terrorists on October 7th. And he kind of tried to apologize and say, I'm sorry, we're not racist, he said, we're not racist, but we just want to distinguish between a terrorist and an Israeli so that they would be brought to the right families. And I thought, wow, he doesn't have to apologize at all. In my eyes, he didn't even have to bury a terrorist. What the terrorist did was so cruel that he actually doesn't deserve a burial. But he says every person deserves a proper burial, and they honor life. They honor the dignity of every human being. So what they do is even collecting the drops of blood of the terrorists and put it all together in a plastic bag. Wow. So you can see here how much Jews honor life and how much of a sacrifice this is, what these people do. And and then on the other side you see the cruelty of Hamas, who doesn't care, who rape people, who torture people, who kill them, who abduct them, who don't care about anything. And I think here you can see the difference between the Jewish Israeli high standard of morality, and on the other hand, the cruelty of the terror of Hamas. that led to that massacre. So, with everyone who has seen that, if we watch some videos, we are far away. We see only this short video of the big picture, but some people were there when there was still the shooting going on, like the first responders that we saw here, or the soldier who tried to help, or the policeman. And then there were people who were right in this massacre, who tried to escape, who ran away, who tried to go in a car and try to flee. And then there are people who, on their way, when they tried to flee, the Hamas came with their trucks, with their cars, and they stopped the Israeli cars on the road, and they would shoot people, so that the road was blocked quite fast, because if the first car is stopped, and then the second and the third, and a few people were shot, they blocked the entire road, and no one can continue fleeing, and they would all run into the arms of the terrorists. So many people died also on the streets, and people would run out of their cars, and they would run into the bomb shelters that were there next to the road. In Israel, you have to live with the fact, especially if you live next to Gaza, that you would be attacked by rockets at any time. And it's horrible. No other country would let this happen without any reaction. But Israel is, very listens, in my eyes, too much to what other countries tell them what to do. So Israelis had to live with that fact. So they built bomb shelters next to the street, and there people could hide if they, for example, they're at a bus station, they have to wait for the bus, or in every city, next to every playground. The horrible stories that I heard of a mother playing with 3 children at the playground, and all of a sudden a rocket comes, and there's this alarm, and she has to run away with her kids, and she can only grab 2 kids because she has 2 arms, one kid here, one kid there, and she runs to the bomb shelter, but there's 3 kids of her. So what does she do? She just takes those 2 who are closest to her, she runs away, and the third one has to stay at the playground, and she cannot run it back because there's rockets, and there was even a part of the rocket falling on that playground right next to her child standing there. Look what decisions these Israelis have to go through, what horrible scenes you cannot imagine. And this is almost normal in Israel, like all these moral questions that you might ask yourself at school maybe, or in philosophy classes. You think about what to do in that case. There's not even a second that you can think about it, and you have to make a decision. What a feeling the mother has to have leaving one child behind, and how must these 2 children feel seeing their brother or sister on the playground without any protection, and how must the child feel, look, my mother has abandoned me? Or it's horrible scenes that Israelis have to go through almost every day in certain areas, at certain times, and especially on that day. So what happened was horrible, and there's one girl, she's called Yuval, and she was at Nova Festival, and she tried to escape with her friends in a car, and they drove away a little bit. Then there was another rocket alarm, and they had to hide in a bomb shelter next to the road, and they ran into that bomb shelter, and there's enough space for maybe 10-15 people. I was in there with 20 people. We checked it out, how close you can get, like how many people fit in. And I was in there with 20 people, and it was quite narrow. There was not enough space, but we kind of squeezed in, and it worked. And she was in there with more than 30, 35, 38 people. So this girl, Yuval, was in that bomb shelter with over 30 other people, and they had to squeeze in, and there were more and more people coming over time. And these bomb shelters are made for rockets or for parts of rockets that fall off, that they would not hit people. So there's no door, it's just open because the rocket pieces would fall from the sky. But on that day, October 7th, there were many terrorists on the streets, and they would shoot. So these bomb shelters are not made for shooting because, as I said, there is no door. The Hamas terrorists can stand at the entrance and just shoot people in the bomb shelter. And what Hamas did was they also took hand grenades and threw them into the bomb shelter. And very courageous people from that shelter went there and took them by hand and threw them out again before they would explode. So you have only a few seconds and you have to do this. It was 10, 15 of those hand grenades, and they were all thrown out again until one hand grenade exploded too fast because the terrorists saw, okay, if you all throw them out, we're going to hold them longer in our hand and throw them in only right before they explode. So people died in that bomb shelter. Yoval was in there and she saw like how people died. And then there were more and more thrown into. And the next person, because the first one was killed, next person would throw them out. And more people die and they're shot in this bomb shelter. And Yuval is in there. She's on her phone with her dad, and she says to her dad, "What should I do? Come and rescue us. There are terrorists here. They're shooting at us." And the father tries to help her, his daughter, but he doesn't know what to do. And he says we're sending help, and he's trying to reach people, but soldiers are having a hard time coming to these places because everywhere are terrorists. It's just too many. So they cannot really reach Yoval and her friends there in the bomb shelter. And at some point, her dad says, "Pretend to be dead so that the terrorists would not shoot at you." And you have to imagine she's in that bomb shelter, and there's lots of her friends and other people with her, and it's very hot, and they're all squeezed into that tiny bomb shelter. Many people, and there's more and more people coming, and then people get shot and they faint, and people fall on the floor, and she is also on the floor covered by lots of people, dead and alive. And there's parts of dead people, of dead bodies are falling on her, and it's very hot, and she can barely breathe, and she's really waiting for someone to help her. And then she has to pretend being dead so that she would not be shot. And she's waiting and waiting, and it's hot and it smells, and people are on her, many dead bodies. But somehow she survives. After hours in that bomb shelter, she survives. Some people had to wait 8, 10, 12 hours for the soldiers to come and rescue them. So Yuval is one of those who have survived, and she was not a singer, but she always wanted to sing. And after October 7th, after she survived this tragedy, she became a singer, and she got quite famous. She wrote a song called "New Day Will Rise," and her name is Yuval Raphael, and she sang for the Eurovision Song Contest, which is a European music competition that is quite famous. So if you're not from Europe, it's quite a famous thing in Europe. And she sang for Israel in 2025 with her song "New Day Will Rise." And we will listen to this song now because it was released in the middle of the war by a survivor of the October 7th attack, by a young girl who has survived the Hamas attack, who has survived in a bomb shelter. And she sings about losing so many of her friends, looking into the eyes of death, but she survived, and she encourages us all to look for new days to come, because she thinks about the hope that there will be a future. So after we have listened to so many horrible stories now from 7th of October, and there's a lot more stories, I'll leave it up to you to to look up more stories. So she takes us into that what she went through, but more than that, she has a message. The message is new day will rise. There will be tomorrow. So we'll listen to her song now. She sings this in English, and a part is in French, and a very small part is in Hebrew. And as I said, it's from the Eurovision Song Contest 2025. It's the song for Israel. So each country gives a song, and that was from Israel. And her name is Yuval Raphael. We will listen to her song now, New Day Will Rise.
And even if you say goodbye, you'll never go away. You are the rainbow in my sky, my colors in the gray, my only wish upon a star, sunshine in the day, the only song that my piano ever plays. And even if you say goodbye, you'll always be around to lift me up and take me high, keep my feet close to the ground. Are you proud of me tonight? Dreams are coming true. I choose the light, nothing to lose if I lose you. New day will rise, life will go on. Everyone who cries, don't cry alone. Darkness will fade, all the pain will go by, but we will stay, even if you say goodbye. Et même si tu dis adieu, tu ne partiras jamais. Mon ciel dans mon ciel bleu, mes couleurs dans le cri. Moi se souhaite sous un ciel tard, un rayon de ma journée. La seule chanson que mon piano peut jouer. New day will rise, life will go on. Everyone cries, don't cry alone. Darkness will fade, all the pain will go by, but we will stay, even if you say new day will rise, will go on. Everyone cries, don't cry alone. Darkness will fade, all the pain will go by, but you will stay, the love of my life. מים רבים לא יכבו את האהבה, ונהרות לא ישטפו. New day will rise. Everyone cries, don't cry alone. Darkness will fade, all the pain will go by, but we will stay, even if you say goodbye. A new day will rise. New day will rise.
That was Yuval Raphael, A New Day Will Rise. And as I said, Yuval was there on October 7th. She survived in a bomb shelter next to the Nova Festival, and she has lost many of her friends. So for me, I think this is a declaration of life. Her song is a declaration of hope, not only of survival, but of hope, because she sees that a new day will rise and pain will go by. And she says, we all cry, but don't cry alone, because the entire nation of Israel went through a trauma, and many people couldn't deal with that. Of course not. But the Israelis are giving each other new hope and to continue and to go on. So that song was released in March 2025 at the European Eurovision Song Contest. So it was 1.5 years after the war started, so after October 7th. And you see that the wound is still deep. And I think it is still deep. After October 7th, every day became another remembrance of the October 7th massacres, because people never got the chance to deal with what happened. It was so overwhelming. What happened on that day was too much to handle. But on that same day, Israel had to stay focused and had to fight and to self-defend, but to defend itself. But in the same moment, when they were still seeing so much pain, so much loss, many people lost their loved ones, lost their families, their friends, but they had to fight. So in the same moment, they discovered more and more and more of that horrible things. At the same time, they had to stay strong and focus and fight. And from October 8th on, there was a continuation of October 7th, because if you don't go through a process of healing of what happened on October 7th, you will live through that day over and over again. And many people have not come to the point yet of coming over what happened. They're still struggling with what happened on that day, plus everything else that came on top after. Because this war, with all its rockets from Hamas, from Hezbollah, from the Houthis in Yemen, from Iran, from the regime in Iran, so many things were going on even after October 7th in that war, so that many more Israelis lost their lives, many more soldiers are injured now. Many people have big problems to live a normal life now, because there's no normal life yet. Plus everything that they went through on October 7th. So it's very hard. And on top of all of that comes when the West shows Israel its hard face. You know, when the West thinks that we can judge Israel for what it does, if we think that we know better. So I think this is another slap in Israel's face. Not only that we don't stand completely with Israel, but that we also have always something that we think Israel should do different. None of us has ever gone through a situation like this, but at the same time, we think we can judge on Israel what to do and what not to do. So on my presentation, I will show you now again a slide that I've shown you already 2 weeks ago. It's the 3D test of anti-Semitism, and I mentioned that before. It's 3 Ds that are, if one or more of them is fulfilled, it's anti-Semitism. So if people delegitimize Israel, demonize Israel, or apply double standards on Israel, it's anti-Semitism. For example, delegitimization is not accepting the existence of Israel, not letting Israel fight for its existence, and not allowing Israel to decide on its own about military decisions, political decisions, but taking away the most profound rights of Israel's existence. This is delegitimization, and this is what is happening in this war, that people say, well, actually, it's Israel's own fault. Israel should not do this, and Israel, in the end, maybe the reason for it all is the existence of the state of Israel. This is putting Israel's right to exist away. It's taking away Israel's right to exist. Demonization is when, for example, people compare Israel with the Nazis, the German Nazis, saying Israel is committing genocide. Israel is is always the bad guy in this conflict, which is not true. As we've seen, Israel is the victim, and there was a genocide against Israel. And I'm not talking about the Shoah, the Holocaust. I'm talking about just 2.5 years ago on October 7th. That is a genocide against Israel. And what Israel is doing in Gaza is not a genocide. It's the other way around. But people demonize Israel. And then the third one, double standards. No country would ever accept anything like that happening against them. But everyone expects Israel to act very humble, very forgiving, and Israel is not even really allowed to defend itself in a war where it is attacked from all sides. You know, it was not only Hamas throughout the war. There's Hezbollah, who actually wanted to fight together with Hamas against Israel on that same day together. It was just because Hamas and Hezbollah had the same plan, and we have proof that Hamas has exact plans about what's going, like who's living in which village, in which house, how many people, and who's living there, what are the names, if they have a dog or not. They know they know all these things exactly. Why? Because many people from Gaza came over the border from Gaza to Israel every day because they worked in Israel. They worked with these families, and many of these families of these kibbutzim who were attacked on October 7th are very leftist people who are secular people who think that they want to have peace with the Palestinians, and they think that they can only create peace through letting these Arab people live with them together and see that these Jews are very nice people, normal people, and so they think that they can create peace through living together. But you see all the good that they have given to them. What is the response? It's the October 7th attack. So these people from Gaza only checked out on the homes of the Israelis to draw very exact plans, maps of the kibbutzim, of these villages, to know who lives in which house, so that later they could attack very exactly and kill as many Jews as possible. So the same plans we have from Hezbollah in the north, from Lebanon, about the north of Israel. So they actually planned on attacking on the very same day, both from the south and from the north together. And if that happened, Israel, I think, would not have survived. But Hamas just started on October 7th, and so Hezbollah was not informed, so they didn't do it at the same time. And when they heard what Hamas did, they didn't attack on the same day. They could have. They actually wanted to, but they were, I think because Hamas just started without them, they were a little angry at Hamas. I know they have the personal problems, whatever. So that's why they didn't attack on the same day. But Israel knew that they would attack, and later they found these maps and everything that gave them the evidence that the plan was there. And so Israel knew that the Hezbollah from the north would attack next. That's why the war, Israel was more afraid of what would come from the north, because there's a never-ending arsenal of weapons and fighters. Even all the way from Afghanistan, the Taliban would come. While Gaza is kind of closed, there's still enough places open so that they could smuggle so many weapons over the sea, the Mediterranean, or through Egypt, through the tunnels there. But Israel knew that Hezbollah could attack at the same time. Thanks God they didn't. But throughout the war, Hamas attacked, Hezbollah attacked in the north, Lebanon. Then the Iranian regime attacked. The Houthis, another terror organization from Yemen. So Israel is surrounded by its enemies, and no other country would let this happen. But if Israel is attacked by everyone all the time, the West comes and tries to judge Israel, not the other countries, not the terror organizations. It's always against Israel, and this is double standards, that you apply a standard on Israel that you wouldn't apply on anyone else. And I think what happened on October 7th is bad enough. But what the West does through its continuous moral slap in the face of Israel is, I think, another step of not only anti-Semitism, but also of hatred against Israel. Because you show that you judge Israel for what it's doing, while Israel is only protecting itself against terrorists all around. So what is going on in the moment in the Middle East is basically all connected to the 7th of October, because all the hatred of terror organizations, of Muslim countries against Israel, all this hatred was collected kind of over the years. It was there always, but now it broke out and there's more to come. We're in the middle of a very intense fight against the Iranian regime, and Israel is suffering a lot. There's a lot of rockets falling on Israel at the moment. There's many people who get injured, who get hurt, who get killed through these attacks. Where are our media talking about this? They usually only talk about anything that Israel does, but they never really talk about what the other countries do against Israel, what terrorist organization do against Israel. And I think our job is to stand with Israel at all cost, because what's happening in Israel is only the beginning. It's about to come to Europe as well if we don't pay attention. And what Israel is doing is actually fighting our fight. Israel is fighting our fight, because what Israel is doing there is fighting against enemies who are also our enemies. So we should stand with Israel. We should support our brothers and sisters in Israel and show them all our love and support every single day. What they went through is not fair. And they deserve not only our pity on October 7th, but on every other day after. And so I want to end with this, that we should stand with Israel at all time, at all costs, always, everywhere. In Israel and throughout the world, as we see all over the world, in every country, there are attacks against Jews, whether they are Israelis or not. It doesn't matter. If Israel is attacked, that does not only mean that a country is attacked. It's Jews everywhere are attacked, because we see what has happened only after October 7th. It was before already, but let's only talk about massacres that happened after October 7th at Bondi Beach in Australia, at Manchester, in Amsterdam, in all these places where Jewish people, whether they're Israeli or not, are attacked by terrorists, by left, right, and Muslim organizations because they hate Jews. And this is anti-Semitism, and it's growing. And we know about anti-Semitism from the right, like we've seen Nazi Germany in the Shoah Holocaust. But there's a growing number of anti-Semitic acts against Jews from the left at the moment, and from Muslim countries and Muslim organizations and Muslim people all over the world. So what we see is a very dangerous combination of Sunnitic and Shiitic, so Sunna and Shia Islamic groups that work together. You can call this sushi, Sunna, Shia, sushi. It's a sushi Islamic rise against Israel in the Middle East. But the same thing is happening in Europe, in the West, with left and Muslim groups working together. It's again like the sushi combination. The left and Muslim combination is also it's a work together of two groups of people who have actually nothing in common, who are actually against each other. But when it comes to the topic of Israel, the Jews, all of a sudden they work together because they have the same enemy. And this is very dangerous. We've seen this in Iran, how the left and the Muslim groups working together could put the entire country into a big fall. And we see the same in the West now. On our streets, who's protesting? It's Muslim groups and left groups together. And this is a very dangerous cocktail. And I think what we have to do here is to stand with Israel, to stand with the Jewish people, and to do it loud and to do it now. Because if you try to stay silent, if you think you're neutral, you're in the middle, you don't do anything wrong, then you're on the loser side. Like what happened in Nazi Germany, people stayed silent, they didn't do anything, they thought, oh, we're not for it, we're not against it, we would just stay silent, and it was the silent majority that killed the Jews too. So we have to stand up now, rise against anti-Semitism, and we have to stand with Israel. We have to stand with the Jews. This is what we have to do, because if we stay silent, we do the same against the Jews as the enemies do against Israel. So let us rise and stand with Israel. Let us not stay the silent majority, but let us stand up and stand with Israel with whatever we do. So that was what I wanted us to know. And I will end this lecture with a third song, because we've listened to a few songs now, and I will show you now a last song that many people listen to at the moment in Israel. It's a song called Tamid Ohev Oti, which means always loves me. So it's talking about God. It's a religious song now, and talking about God, that God always loves me. This is quite an interesting song, because it was written by Yair Elitzur. He's a Hasidic musician, and he says that God always loves me. Hashem Yitbarach. So the holy God, His name shall be blessed, always loves me, and He reminds Himself and everyone who listens that God always loves me. He's always with me. And he basically says this to everyone who listens, especially to his Jewish brothers and sisters, that God has never stopped loving his people. And he says, God always loves me. And is also known under the name Od Yoter Tov, which means even more good, because the song sings about how God loves me and how He always does good to me, you know, in the midst of October 7th and all the massacre and all the torture and everything that happened, and even afterwards in the war and everything, He comes to the conclusion, God still loves me, and He will give me good and only good and only good and even more good and even more good and even more. So it's a song of blessing for the entire nation of Israel, that God will do more and more good to His people. And Yair Elitzur wrote this song, and then it was later covered by Sasson Shaulov, and his version became very famous. And many Israelis sing it now, because they know that this is the right message they have to hear now. After 2.5 years of war, this is the message that they have to listen to. We started with depression in the beginning of this lecture, and we are going more and more into the bright light that Israel is facing. Whenever you face God, whenever you put your trust in God, you will see God is good. He loves you, and He will give you more and more good. So let's listen to Sasson Shaulov's song, Tamid Ohev Oti.
השם הוא אבא טוב והוא תמיד מתפאר בי, רואה בי רק את הנקודות הטובות, רואה שאני רוצה להיות טוב, רק לא יוצא לי, חסרות לי כולה כמה תפילות. והשם הוא גם ראה את הרצון שהיה לי, כשניסיתי לא אמרתי נואש. רואה בביזיון שלי, במר שהרגשתי, איך התחלתי שוב כל יום מחדש. והשם יתברך תמיד אוהב אותי, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. השם יתברך תמיד אוהב אותי, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. ויהיה לי עוד יותר טוב, ועוד 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 יותר טוב, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. שומע מרחם עליי ותמיד עונה לי, ואם עדיין לא ממשיך לחכות, מלא אותי בזה שאתה תמיד אוהבתי, תיתן לי כל יום מחדש מתנות, ותנהיג אותי ברחמים כאלו כמו שבעולם הזה נקרא רחמים. שיראו כולם שכן אתה שומע תפילות, ונחייך נהיה בריאים ונשיר. שהשם יתברך תמיד אוהב אותי, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. השם יתברך תמיד אוהב אותי, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. ויהיה לי עוד יותר טוב, ועוד 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 יותר טוב, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. ותהיה לי פרנסה, תהיה לי עשירות, ורווקים ורווקות תהיה להם סיווג. תהיה גם רפואה שלמה ובריאות איתנה, חיים יפים מאושרים שנה אחרי שנה. השם יתברך תמיד אוהב אותי, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. השם יתברך תמיד אוהב אותי, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב. ויהיה לי עוד יותר טוב, ועוד 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 יותר טוב, ותמיד יהיה לי רק טוב.
So this song, Od Yoter Tov by Sasson Shaulov, was released in 2024. So you might think, Israel is, getting over it, and now like the situation is getting better and better, and Israel is feeling more and more happy, and things are getting better. On the one hand, things are getting better, but on the other hand, they're not. We're still in the middle of a war. Israel is still suffering, and many people have not come over it. But basically, this song was released before the other song that I showed you before. So Yuval Raphael sang the song New Day Will Rise. That was in 2025, 1 year ago in March. But this song was released even before, in June 2024. And then the cover version was released in September 2024. So you see, even in the midst of the war, if you focus on God, you can realize God is still with me, He still loves me, and He still has good for me, and only good to come. So what an encouraging song for us to listen to that. And that cover version of the song was released shortly after the 2024 Lebanon electronic device attacks, when Israel attacked many Hezbollah members, very high-ranked members, through the pager attacks. And that was really perfect timing, because it was a turning point in the war, and it was a turning point for society to focus on the good things that God is about to give to His people. So I want to end with this positive song and this perspective that we should all have, looking towards the good things and focusing on God. And I still want to encourage every one of us to stand with Israel, because this is our task for this time. This is what we should do. So at the end, I will quickly show you in my presentation the last page that quickly shows you the image sources, so that I have shown this. And now I want to thank everyone for listening, for watching. And now there's the chance to ask questions. If you have any questions, I'll give a few minutes on asking questions. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm sorry for this very long lecture. I think that was the longest I've ever done. It's I'm sorry, but thank you for your attention. Thank you that you stayed with me through the entire time. I hope that you could learn a lot through that. And if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, thank you so much for your attention. I see that you don't have any questions. If you still have any, you feel free to send me an email. My email address is Talita, Talita, at jhg-fulda, fulda.de. You can ask me any questions. I try to answer. And at the very end, I want to mention that there is the opportunity to donate. This lecture is for free, of course, but if you want to, you are welcome to donate for the JHG, which is the Jesus Haus Gemeinde, Jesus House Church, Kelat Bet Yeshua, here in Fulda, where we're having this lecture. So if you want to donate, you can scan the QR code on the left side. And if you want to donate for Christians for Israel International, which is an organization that supports Israel, as we should all do, then you can donate through the right QR code on the right side. And again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your attention. By the way, the QR code of Christians for Israel International, this is the right QR code. In the previous videos, you might have had some troubles with scanning the QR code, so use this one, or always use the link in the description of the video. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for listening, and let us stand with Israel. God bless you all. Am Yisrael Chai. May the people of Israel live. Amen. Thank you.